Kelly Reichart's Old Joy, released in 2006, is, in my humble opinion, a masterpiece. I've only recently discovered this film, but I've already felt the need to rewatch it multiple times. It's a work of simple, meditative beauty, simultaneously tragic and affirming. Perhaps I'm going out on a bit of a limb here, but I would say that this is one of the greatest examples of slow, contemplative cinema that I've seen from the 21st century. And today I'd like to talk about it. At its very core, Old Joy is about the relationship between two men, Kurt and Mark. Although we never dive too deep into the specifics of their relationship, it is easily inferred that at one time they were very good friends and that they lived together for some amount of time. The story of Old Joy takes place years after the two informally separated, following a bumbling, misguided attempt to reunite their friendship. It all begins when Kurt invites Mark to go on a short camping trip and visit Oregon's Bagby Hot Springs.
Oh yeah? What you got? Lay it on me. Sure, I could be into that.
Mark accepts the offer, eager to escape the stress of his imminent fatherhood and a seemingly strained relationship with his wife.
Look, you're just waiting for me to tell you to go. We know you're going, so I don't know why we have to go through this thing of me letting you off the
I'm
hook.
not gonna enjoy myself if you're miserable about it.
So he meets up with his old friend.
Hey. I borrowed a cooler. Take it. And a wagon. And a TV. You're looking good. Really? I wish.
Where their differences become readily apparent. I mean, just looking at the two men, you can get a sense of their personalities. Kurt is more immature, less stable, and more spiritual than Mark. Mark is more mature and established. But I think one of the things that elevates this film is Reichart's neutrality in her approach to these two characters. It would be easy to make one character more sympathetic than the other. Make Kurt into a man-child or Mark into a snob. But both these characters are realized, sympathetic, and caring. The only thing different about them is just that, their differences. And Reichardt understands that there is nothing wrong with that. Now, as these two different men enter the Oregon wilderness, Reichardt begins to show her excellent use of cinematic language. The film is full of long takes, highlighting the lush green wilderness of Oregon, filled with the subtle sound of feet on a trail, the ramblings of rushing water, or the shallow conversation between two men.
Good. I feel good. How about you?
Nature serves as a gentle escape from the stresses of the world. For example, compare what the audience hears while Mark drives through
Civil
town.
rights movement.
We're talking about. I mean, the Voting Rights Act was a great thing. It enfranchised.
yes,
you know, it was the beginning.
To what he hears while he drives through nature. Reichardt isolates the characters in this nature, and thus isolates their emotion and their connection between each other. And in doing this, she invites the audience to sit and engage with the emotions of the film, to spend time in this relationship and its nuances that really couldn't be achieved with a more traditional pace. And I think now seems like the perfect time to explore this relationship. I must commend both Daniel London and Will Oldham, the actors of Mark and Kurt respectively. They bounce off each other's performances so naturally, creating some of the most convincing, awkward dialogue I've ever heard in a movie.
Sleep in the tent with you?
It's fine.
Lucy gonna sleep in the tent?
It's a two-man tent. 2 men and a doggy.
That's cool.
2 men in a doggy tent.
That's pretty cool. Sleeping with the dog's pretty cool. She's a girl.
Keeps you warm.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, they get along, but something has clearly changed. Something is missing in this relationship. Something fundamental. Kurt even admits this during a moment of drunken vulnerability around a campfire during the first night of the trip.
I miss you, Mark. I miss you really, really bad. I want us to be real friends again. There's something between us, and I don't like it. I want it to go away.
Of course, it's only natural we deny these emotions.
Man, what are you talking about? We're fine.
Nobody wants to admit that a friendship no longer exists, but deep down we just can't deny it. If you'll allow me to get personal for a moment, coming out of high school and going into college represented a big period of change for me. Suddenly I was seeing my childhood friends less and less, from every day to a few times a month to just a few times a year. And it was and still is difficult. I always wanted these friendships to stay the exact same forever. But that was never going to happen. It just can't. And don't get me wrong, they're still my friends, and just like Kurt and Mark, we get along when we're together, and it does offer us a brief escape from the stress of the world, but it's just not the same. And I think that's why Old Joy spoke to me as it did. It captures those emotions so perfectly and offers a really beautiful insight into them. You see, when Kurt and Mark arrive at the hot spring, there is this palpable sense of peace, slowness, and contemplation. More transcendent than the film that came before it. In this moment, Kurt describes a dream, and the realization that came to him within this dream.
She just put her arms around me and said, "It's okay. You're okay. Sorrow is nothing but worn-out joy."
So the tragedy of this film, the emotions elicited from this fizzling connection, are simply an acknowledgement of a past beauty. Our sadness and longing is proof that there was a real connection, a real joy. It's just old. And it's a real bummer that it doesn't exist anymore. And it's okay to feel sad about it. But it's also important that we appreciate that these things happened. That's about all I have to say for Old Joy. There's a fair bit more you could dive into, sort of the relationship between nature and civilization that's presented in the story. There's also definitely homosexual undertones you could read into, and I think that's totally valid and intentional. But I just kind of wanted to do a surface level dive. I think it's a very personal movie, because it's kind of a universal experience. So you're supposed to take out of it whatever you can, and I think that's another one of the reasons it's so contemplative and meditative, because it gives you time to think about applying this movie to your own life. But I can't wait to revisit it and explore the film even more. It's just such a unique piece of cinema. But that's all for today. I've been Eggnog. I eggnog at the movies now, actually. And I hope to see you next week, where I might do a Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie, or I might try to do something a little more upbeat. I've been doing a lot of depressing movies lately, but I like depressing movies, so I think next week will be Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Bright Future, and then after that I'll try to do something like a happier movie. But until then, stay safe, and I hope to see you next week.